All right, friends, it's time once again to go deep sea fishing in the lost sea of faith, throwing a life preserver to those seeking a spiritual handout. Yes, friends, here we go. All right, well, quit being silly. Let everybody get on and give it hell. We'll grab it by the nose and whip its ass, which I have been forbidden to say at work. Can you believe that shit? Okay, once again, squandered by Ironwood Candles and Gifts. You can find them on Etsy. Well worth looking into. Wonderful candles. I burn them all the time. Something about having a candle burning seems to make life worthwhile. Right? Handcrafted. All right, good deal. Come on in. Let's see what happens. All right, we got one person in. So, I've been talking for the past couple of weeks about this book that I'm writing, and it's going to continue. So, hopefully, it continues in a manner that makes sense. The name of the book, the working title, is Something More. I got this feeling that there should be something more. We should have some kind of reasonable expectation of what it means, and we just jump in here like John Wayne said, I'm going to try this way. Let's see what happens. I want to realize shit just kind of keeps going the same. But I've gone over the first couple of paragraphs, the working aspects of it is in what. All right, how you doing? Good to hear from you, kiddo. I've gone over love and sacrifice in this. Hey, man, what's going on? How you boys doing? As I was saying, I've gone over love and sacrifice, kind of how we're going to touch on it, because it seems to be the biggest thing. The two most powerful motivating factors in our spirituality is love. And it's odd there's not a room for it, but there's a lot of rooms for sacrifice, so on and so forth. All right. But it can't be all that, can it? I mean, if all we're talking about is just love and fairy tales and sacrifice, that sounds good, but it seems like it's an awful lot of ups and downs that really don't help us in the long run. It really doesn't help us with regards to what we're wanting to achieve, what we're going for, what we're looking for. And I got to thinking about, okay, so what else would it look like? And there's a couple of stories we're going to go over in the Lord tonight, just kind of a superficial thing as I flesh it out. We're going to discuss it. What would it look like? Because we ended the last one. We talked about sacrifice, right? Sacrifice is a huge thing, and it's all through the Lord, but it's all through our history too, right? But it's got this. I'm going to go ahead and read it so we can get back into what I was talking about. Maybe it'll get me warmed up, right? So in ancient times, sacrifice was believed to garner all three. Like it would send this energy back to the gods. They would notice this and bestow their favor upon whoever offered the sacrifice, right? In ancient times, it was people. You have this terrifying image of tens of thousands of skulls at the bottom of Aztec and Mayan pyramids. You have recorded visuals of forests full of bodies hanging in the trees. Offerings to Odin or Tyr or whomever in ancient times. And that's a scary thought. It's really hard for our modern minds to wrap our hands around that as that was a holy thing in those days, right? It wasn't terrifying to them, and it's become this terrifying thing to us. So what it does is when we got to look at some part of ourselves that we need to get rid of, it's very difficult to put that into context and say, okay, this is what I need to be working on and getting rid of. Sacrifice. It's developed this ugly connotation that's really maybe not well deserved, right? In those day and ages, it wasn't an ugly thing. I appreciate that. These terrifying images, they created a window for our mind's eye that said, you don't need to look through there. And as that terror began, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. Because when the latest Abrahamic faith came along, it said, well, this one true God is going to do it for you. When for thousands of years before that, there have been all kinds of deities that have already done it. But they didn't do it say, I'm doing this for you. They're doing this saying, hey, I'm going to give you an example to follow. So there's a real subtle change in that created this fear. That's the essence of the Christianization of our lore, right? To create a fear of what lies beyond. Whereas before, our ancestors never really had that. There was absolute certain knowledge that, hey, whatever comes next is going to be amazing. To die in battle, they didn't want to die necessarily a straw death, but even in a straw death, you go to the halls of your ancestors. You go and you tell all these great tales, right? Would there be shame? Yeah, there's possible there could be shame. Somebody else didn't. There's always that. So maybe that was, but this great fear was created of our afterlife. And then the Abrahamic faith came along and said, oh, you don't need to be afraid. We'll do it for you. Jesus, take the wheel. But that's one of the concepts I wrote about Beneath the Sacred Tree was all of these other deities that did the exact same thing. And when you look deep enough, you realize that every single book in the Bible is taken from a much older pagan tale and then taken and written in such a way to make the idea that the church had to do it for you because you weren't capable of it. That's anathema to everything, just about all of the pagan spiritualities. I don't care if it's Slav or Hellenistic or Chemix or chemist. How do you say that? Kheme. Anyway, the Egyptians, right? Those fellas who have a wonderful deal that covers the entirety of the span of your spiritual existence, from living to not living, or in the mortal shell to not in the mortal shell. I suspect the same thing might be here. But we're talking about sacrifice and love. And those are wonderful things to talk about. But much of our lives is regular. What does it look like for us to work with something just regular? What hope can we have? What support can we expect along the way? And I've heard many times, people say, well, the gods really don't care what you're doing. They're not going to come help you. I disagree. I've got too many examples of it in the Lord that say otherwise, right? But maybe that's what we got, is all we should expect, this ideas of divine love and sacrifice, because the idea of divine love isn't really clarified either, right? I think there's more we should have a healthy expectation of. So the desire to connect with the divine as we perceive it ought to be one. However you want to just perceive it is up to you. I'm going to offer some suggestions that I think that work for me. Might need a little twist to work for you, but still, however it works, make the connection. And the other is this yearning to kind of rise above our station in life. This is kind of primary among them, that things will get better, that we can be better somehow, that we can kind of navigate the ups and downs, that we might find some kind of, in our spiritual strength, some kind of emotional and mental stability from all of the various, just the bombardment that we deal with on a daily basis from the news, our friends, social media, everywhere we look, there's something going wrong, or there's something happening, or, just all kinds of things that drive us to distraction from becoming more of what we're supposed to become. Okay, so what would that look like is kind of what I'm getting at. But the third thing that kind of goes with this is the development of a mindset that allows us to accept with strength and hope everything that occurs along the way. Because we're not going to eliminate the ups and the downs. It's just not how it works. But we can begin to change or perceive how we react to them in any given way, and maybe make that stronger, and then become something more when we understand that, as Justin says, there's no storm that's so bad that jumping out of the boat is a good idea. Yeah, thank you very much. Now, I've read a lot of literature, both old and new, looking for such things. And it seems like we find in the Greeks, per se, we find wisdom, right? We find the great philosophers of the old world. In the tombs of the Egyptian spiritualities, a celebration of the entirety of the spiritual experience. Slavic, Celtic, Roman, and even the tales of North and South America, Native Americans, they all contain a wide-ranging knowledge of our place, their place in the universe, in the world they live in, right? That's a big thing. Joseph Campbell said that whenever somebody moves into an area, the first thing they do is incorporate themselves in the world that we live in. Everything about our existence separates us from the world we live in. How will we ever understand our place in the world if we're constantly separating ourselves from it? If we're determining the quality of who we are, not by our place in the world and how we live with it, but by the money that we make and our separation from it. The more money we make, the more greater things we can have, the greater house, the better car, all of the things that separate us from the world. That's a trap. Now, I'm not saying don't go make some money, right? The best thing you can do in the world for yourself is make a little money, have a little coin in your pocket, right? You can't change the world if you ain't got some coin. But if you look at the world, it is littered with ancient civilizations who at one time thrived, who at one time were magnificent, amazing cultures. And then they separated themselves from the world they live in. They got so entrenched in their area and so separated from it. When the world changed, they couldn't. And one thing we can be certain of, no matter what happens and who says what or what politician is elected, the world changes. Volcanoes erupt, there's droughts, there's famines, there's multiple collapses of agriculture. There are things that change on the world that the part that you're in right now may not be worth living in. When you get so thoroughly separated from that and cannot and fail to understand what that is, and it ain't caused by humans, right? It's something else altogether. We lose our ability to be mobile, right? Look at the great herds of animals that move across the surface of the planet. If you even begin to peruse the migrations of all the animals, they go from where it's bad to where it's good. When we develop everything that we do and call it civilization, we change the fundamental aspect of that. But I digress, right? But all of these ancient cultures talk about this stuff, right? It seems, but if you look at all of them, it seems that each of them has a piece of the puzzle. They got one little sliver of this right here. Oh, well, that little sliver ties in with this little sliver over here, right? Because at one time they were all connected, right? A lot of science, people call it pseudoscientific, but I'm telling you right now, there was transcontinental, transoceanic trade long before we ever believed there were, right? If there's just one thing you can take that'll kind of blow your mind, the one skeletal remain they found in the Amazon and all those great cities they're discovering, the closest genetic relative of it are the Aboriginal people in Australia. And now we're finding rock art in the Amazon that's 12,000 years old. There's a lot of things we don't understand, a lot of things we don't get. But in our mythologies, we find very simple things that are congruent with everyone's existence. And what does that look like? Love, sacrifice to become something better, strength to protect your families, hope, and the ability to try to be something better than you currently are, right? The best warrior, however you want to do it. We don't live in an age that does that, but all of those things are important. And here's the important thing. So you have the Hindus as well. And the Hindus have hinted at ancient knowledge capable of empowering us. Their tales are amazing. In many ways, the depth of the experience rivals the Nordic ideas, but I don't subscribe to the idea that there's a connection there. I don't subscribe to that at all. Okay. One very important thing to remember about them, though, and this is something that kind of strikes me as something we ought to pay attention to. The strength of their faith and their spirituality enabled them to withstand the most violent aspect of Abrahamic faith. The Muslims tried to invade, Islam tried to invade the Hindus, and they're still fighting with them today. And they're withstanding that. And that Hindu faith is tens of thousands of years old, right? None of the other ancient philosophies managed to pull off that feat with just basic Christianity, right? From Western Asia to America, it spread like a poison. Somebody else will do it for you. And now we're kind of waking up and trying to figure out, how do we take that back? What does that look like? It literally polluted the well from which we do our inspiration, right? Modifying it, erasing it, and encouraging us to forget and believe that somebody else will do it for us. And we did forget. And now all of a sudden we're looking at it and we're like, I'm missing something. All of us that come here and take a look at this, all of us that read these books, all of us that join in or take a good long look or read or venture into whatever aspect of spirituality they want to. I don't care if it's Celtic Romantic. I don't care if it's Celtic or Slavic or Greek or Hellenistic or Roman Celtic or Roman or Norse paganism or Asatru or heathenry or whatever you want to call it. Every one of them has an idea, and many of them came there because of a dream. But all of them had this idea that something's missing here. Something ain't quite right. No European will be. It is a, yeah, but I have it. But it goes beyond that too. If you look at the worldwide scale, there's something happened with the Mayans as well. The Mexicans and Central Americans, I mean, those Zapata Indians in Central Mexico have been having a revolution against the Mexican government for a long time, right? And they're anything but Catholic. So there's something happening overall that we need to pay attention to. Do we have what it takes to once again set an example? I firmly believe that we do. And I firmly believe that it's in the lore. Now, I understand everybody wants to say the lore's too heavily Christianized. I will tell you, as we come across it, exactly the points in which it was Christianized. One of them was with Hel, right? When they made her Loki's daughter, even Grimm in the 1800s was talking about, you can go much further back and she is always there in some form or another, right? Always there, always that primal ancient knowledge, this protector. And as Loki wasn't really present on the continent, right? So she was. So there's a Christianization there, and what it did was create a fear of death. It continued this idea that we should be afraid of what comes next. And the only way to remove that fear is to worship this God. When our ancestors were of a mind that, all right, let's see what happens next. How else can you charge off of a ship onto a foreign shore not knowing what's going on? You have no intelligence what these people are like. There could be 1,000 warriors hiding in the weeds. 200 men going to jump off a ship? So there's some things there. One of the things that really caught that, I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. One of the things that really brought forth that thought process in my mind was an early season of the show Vikings. Yep, please don't puke. Just bear with me, okay? There's a scene there where they need a sacrifice. They're at Uppsala, right? And one of the Vikings, he doesn't hesitate. He steps right up, I'll go. Think about the thought process that must be present for a man to want to do that. He's expecting something better. He's expecting a benefit for his community. He's expecting something better for himself. It's a win-win situation in that man's mind's eye. We don't have that. That's what's been taken from us. The ability to enjoy the win-win situation of our spirituality and benefiting the people around us. So what would that look like? How does that manifest? One of the first things we can really take a look at, right? See if I can find it here. I did a little prep work, but I didn't do enough prep work. The first one that we want to talk about is the Hind Lilyoth, right? Now, I know there's a lot of opinions about this, but there's two things that are happening in this book that are very important that show what it looks like, what the help of the gods might really look like to an average person like us, right? It may not be having a beer on the couch with good buddy Thor. I have heard that. I don't know that I fully comprehend that because that's never really happened to me, but I'm sure somebody believes that very much. If it moves their life in a positive purpose, guidance, and direction forward, they become better. They maybe step up to the plate, become whatever they need to become, or make something of themselves that benefits the community they wish to be a part of. Go for it. Right? I'm not going to make fun of you. Not at this point. Not after these many years. Right? Freya says, Maiden awake, wake thee, my friend, my sister Heinle, in thy hollow cave. Already comes darkness, and ride we must to Valhalla to seek the sacred hall. To the favor of Here-Father seek we to find. To his followers gold he gladly gives. To Hermoth gave he helm and mail coat, and to Sigmund he gave sword as a gift. Now, those are very powerful things. Triumph to some and treasure to others. To many wisdom and skill in words, fair winds for the sailor, to the singer his art, and a manly heart to many a hero. So the first three things, if we look at them, so this woman, this goddess, is awakening this very low, small, it's the woman that sleeps in the street. It's the woman that lives under the rock. It's the most undeveloped aspect of the divine feminine you can come across, right? The most savage, feral aspect of feminine, which is in itself a terrifying thing for most men, They will eat your lunch, right? This goddess of love and fertility and healing is saying, come out here, sister. There's a depth to that I think we do ourselves a disservice by ignoring. So my point is, it doesn't matter where you're at in life. You may be, no man has no worth, right? It says that in Have Them All. But you might be thinking that about yourself. You might be at the very bottom of the barrel, streaked down in the gutter, right? You still have that opportunity to expect some attention. That's a powerful thing in and of itself to behold. This is not the only place that happens. We'll go to the next one here in a minute. But she talks about 3 gifts, right? The sword. What is the sword? It's a powerful phallic symbol of fertility, right? Symbol of power, symbol of authority, right? That's exactly what the sword is, right? The powerful symbol of masculinity, right? To Hermoth, he gave helm and mail coat protection. Some kind of defense against the dangers of the world. Holy shit. All right, some people are going to get askance at that, but we got to begin to start thinking about what this spirituality can do for us, what it means for us. These weren't just given to regular dudes. These were given to Joes that got up and tried, right? That got up and understood what it means to sacrifice. That got up and understood what it means to stand up as men. That got up and stood and tried and gave it their best, right? Now we're on to something that really makes a difference in our world, right? That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Now, she talks about the All-Father. Then she says, Thor shall I honor, right? And this shall I ask. So this divine feminine is going to the divine masculine. She's going to honor him and ask a favor. That his favor too mayest thou ever find. Not for herself, but for someone else. That's an important concept we got to pay attention to as well. When everybody's doing the right thing, when your community is firing on all cylinders and you're all talking together, right? You have what you have at Eager's Feast. You have one bastard come in there, kill somebody to get some attention, hasn't done anything to deserve a seat at the table other than being Odin's wish son, right? So he gets that seat at the table. Does he do anything to justify his place at it? No. He begins to insult all of them. But the magic thing that happens is they don't jump out and just start going against him. It's the god or goddess next to him that stands up for that person. When that one is insulted, the one next to him takes charge. When that one's insulted, the one next to him takes charge. They defend and take care of each other. And in that love, in that willingness to sacrifice themselves in the face of the slings and arrows of those aligned against them, they find strength. And they find harmony. They find power with each other. Holy shit. Now all of a sudden we're on to something, ain't we? That's where the real strength of what all this is about. Though little the brides of giants he loves. So she's going to ask that favor, knowing full well, I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to work with you, but I know damn well he ain't got no use for you. Wow. Once again, just like at Eager's Feast, someone stands up for someone or the next person takes over. Somebody's going to speak on your behalf. You may not be worth shit. I have been not worth a damn thing in my life. Somebody spoke on my behalf. I don't know who it was or what it was. From the stall now, one of thy wolves lead forth, right? So it begins this thing. Right? From the stall now, one of thy wolves lead forth. Along with my boar thou shalt let him run. For slow my boar goes on the road of the gods, and I would not weary my worthy steed. So she's riding a worthy steed, right? She's not riding the boar. She's riding a worthy steed. And she's trying to encourage this person to move forward, to get this blessing from Thor, to give her assistance. And what does she do? She doesn't coddle him. She cuts a wolf loose on his ass so he get up and take care of business. Pain is the most powerful growth thing we can ever imagine. That's what it's all about, guys. So when we got things happen, they're challenging you to get up and try. They're challenging you to get up and stand up one more fucking time. I'm on your side. I'm going to push you. It's what a coach does. It's what any good coach does. It's what someone that loves you does. No. You don't get to lay on your ass and not do anything. Get up and come with me. We're going to do this together. We're going to try harder, right? There it is right there. Son of a bitch. Now we're on to something big, ain't we? Now we're talking. Goes all through this thing. The whole point of it is this low bred, this lowest common denominator, this most feral aspect of feminine divinity reminds this simpleton who's all down to the nuts. I'm fixing to lose everything. I just don't know. She reminds him who he is and where he comes from, what his lineage is. You don't really care what your lineage looks like. If you're reminded of that, you have an obligation to stand up for it. And this goddess goes to seek the blessing of Thor by reminding this man, you better get up off your ass. You better get busy. You better remember who you are. That is love. When you have a friend who's willing to stand up and say, yeah, you got to do better than that, buddy. I know what you're made of. That's the friend you want. You don't want one that's going to blow flowery words up your ass all the time. You want one that's going to push you to try better, right? That's what it's all about. No, you need to go try. You got to do better than that. That's one thing we can look for. So when our desire to connect with the divine, it may not always be flowers, sunshine, rainbows, and pretty forest walks with ferns, right? It might be a wolf on your ass. It could be a bill collector at the door. It could be a lot of things. But that's one thing that it looks like. That's what the assistance of the gods looks like. And what happens from that assistance? He rises to the occasion to become what he's supposed to become through trial and error, through struggle, right? But he wasn't alone. He wasn't ever alone. He had all of this on his side, right? He had these people reminding him who he is. He had this goddess saying, remember this, you asked for it, now you got it. Now let's do it. Right? There's an expectation to live up to justifying your seat at the table. So what does it look like? What's the other thing it looks like? All right. So let's go to the Rig Thula. So some people say, and I see it repeated all the time, and it drives me insane. The Rig Thula is not the creation of the caste system for the Norse. It's not, right? So it says, mighty and strong did Rig go striding. Okay, forward he went on the mid-post way. He came to a dwelling, a door on his post. In did he fare. On the floor was a fire. Two hoary ones by the hearth there sat, I and Edda in olden dress. Great-grandmother, great-grandfather. The first generation to invite the divine into their home. Right? That's an invitation of the divine into their home. It's not some kind of kinky three-way, right? It's an invitation of the divine in their home. It's an invitation of all of the good, wonderful things that Rig represents into the thought processes, actions, beliefs, and behaviors of these 2-3 generations back people to give their children a better world. There's another part of what it looks like when the gods come into your being, come into your relationship. The other one that drives me nuts is Freya and the dwarves making the Brisingamen gem, right? The necklace. She goes down there and spends 7 nights with the dwarves. Look, that's not some kind of orgy. If you really think in that day and age that the most acceptable thing in a time when syphilis would kill you would be for the goddess of fertility, love, and abundance to get a train pulled on her by some dwarves, there's something wrong in that thought process. This is an invitation of the divine amongst the most basic of masculine ideas to create a work of art. So look at it any other way is a denigration of the beauty and power and authority and all of the wonderful things we think of our gods as. When we try to humanize the interaction of the divine with each other, well, then are they still divine? So they go in, great-grandmother and great-grandfather, the Eddas. This is where we get the grandmother's tales, right? He knew well wise words to speak. Soon in the midst of the room he sat, and on either side the others were. They feed him. They ain't got shit, but they make an offering. They're sacrificing the best of what they have. These poor people with a fire on the floor in a ramshackle hut don't have shit, and they offer the best they have to this God. And it pays off, right? So right there. The names I and Edda, Afi and Amma, father and mother, as they're all, that's the three generations. Great grandmother, great grandfather, right? And it was Jacob Grimm that guessed at the meaning of the word Edda and gave us the name of these, right? Thus he was there for 3 nights long, and forward he went on the midmost way, and so 9 months were soon passed by. There was a time in our history when we didn't realize that sexual intercourse always resulted in a child, right? Sometimes it didn't happen. And then they invited the divine into that interaction. Fertility gods and goddesses there's a plethora of them all over the world in all the mythologies. Because we were one time not much more than animals. We had ramshackle huts with fires on the floor, and we believed we need some kind of divine intervention for the creation of a child. A son they bore, right? He wasn't much, but he was better than them, and he was built for speed, right? His skin was wrinkled and rough on his hands, knotted his knuckles, thick his fingers, and ugly his face, twisted his back, and big his heels. So this is a working fool, right? He began to grow and to gain in strength. Soon of his might good use he made. With bags he bound and burdens carried, home bore faggots the whole day long. And one came to their home, crooked her legs, stained her feet, and sunburned her arms. Flat was her nose. Her name was Thyr. Soon in the midst of the room she sat, and by her side there sat the son of the house. They whispered both, and the bed made ready, Thrall and Thyr, till the day was through. Now the real blessing comes in. It's not the first generation, it's that third generation. It's the grandchildren. The grandchildren are really, and that reminds me of that old joke, why do grandparents and grandkids get along so well? Because they have a common enemy. It's true. Children they had, they lived and were happy. Motherfucker, you know how many people in the world would love to just have that? Children they had and lived and they were happy. My gosh, right there is the biggest reason to join on in, to come on in. Children they had and lived and they were happy. I know people want to debate happy and its relative and all that other stuff and what makes you happy and all these other things. But if you have a good life, and you understand you have that good life because of this divine interaction, and you're grateful for it, chances are children you'll have, and you will live, and you will be happy. Now, it doesn't happen once in this story. It happens 3 times. Now, the children, the boys, right, are interesting. This is the first generation, right? Fjolsnir, the cattleman. Klur, the course. Cream, the shouter. Cleggy, the horsefly. Kefsir, the concubine keeper. So he must have been well endowed. Fulnir, the stinking. So he got all his. Drum, the log. Not sure what aspect of his physiology. Yeah, that's a good one. Durgraldi, the fat. Drope, the sluggard. Legialdi, the big leg. Lut, the bent. Hospir, the gray. So these are just regular old working people. Right? You can see them go work in any factory, go work in any power plant, go work on any construction site. You'll find those people. I promise you that much, right? But they also had daughters. Now I feel bad for these poor girls, right? Their names mean the log. So there's 2 logs. That's a sad thing. Stumpy, fat-legged. I don't know, big ankles are a tough one. Armifla, the homely nosed. Yusit, the noisy. I wonder how she got that. Ambot, the servant. All right. Aiken Yasna, the oaken peg. Tortulgifia, clothed in rags. And Tronabinia, the crane-legged. So it runs the gamut. Simple women, but good women. All very grateful for the blessings that are shown up in their home, but also the kind of people that are powerful enough to forge a frontier, to build the roots, the foundations of a civilization. But now he keeps going, right? And it doesn't say he just goes down the street. This could be 1,000 years later for all we know, right? As they begin to settle in, let's pay him another visit and give him another little benefit of blessing, right? This is a consistent effort to move us forward. And it might be 1,000 years, it might be 100 years, it might be 10,000 years. Who knows? It doesn't say. But to just assume that he just went right down the beach, I'll go to this hut and this hut and this hut, I'm not real sure about that, because the names don't justify that, right? Forward went Rig. His road was straight to a hall. He came, and a door there hung. So now we got a door hung. Now we've moved up in the world. Indeed fair. On the floor was a fire. Athena Alma owned the house. No, that's not. So now we've moved up in the world. Now we're frontier folk. There sat the twain and worked at their tasks. The man hewed wood for the weaver's beam. So there's a skill set involved in that. So they've moved forward. Now they know a little bit more than their ancestors did. His beard was trimmed, and over his brow a curl. His clothes fitted close in the corner of chest. So there's some skill there. There's some refinement. There's some development, right? The woman sat and the distaff wielded. So there's a beautiful gift. At the weaving with her arms outstretched, she worked. On her head was a band, on her breast a smock, on her shoulders a kerchief with clasps there was. So now these people have developed. Now this next generation that comes along, this grandmother and grandfather, they're a little bit further down the road. And that's not the names of any of those grandchildren they had. So that's, now we've moved on down generationally. So we have a generation of people. We have Gen X. Now he's working with the millennials, right? Maybe not. These are the people from the late 1800s. I just made that up. But he sat there and he talked with them, right? So then they bore a son, right? With water, they sprinkled him. So now they're beginning to engage in cultural ceremony, right? So the sprinkling of water being the perfect conduit of spiritual energy, right? Laguz is the water, the room for water, for ocean. Right. Well, everything in the world that moves, breathes, walks, talks, shits, pisses, whatever it does, is made of water for the most part. Our brains, the most powerful part of who we are, aside from our heart, is made up mostly of water. Right. So that interconnectedness of all things, that's the divine, that's the conduit, that's the best conduit of divine energy we might come across is water. So sprinkled him. Carl, they named him, in a cloth she wrapped him. He was ruddy of face, and flashing his eyes. He's sharp, right? Automatically, he's smart. He began to grow and to gain in strength. Oxen he ruled, and plows he made ready. Houses he built, and barns he fashioned. Carts he made, and the plow he managed. So this old boy's building the farm. He's laying the foundation for agriculture and society, right? Home did they bring the bride for Carl, in goatskins clad, and keys she bore. Snore was her name. Neath the veil she sat. At home they made, and rings exchanged. The bed they decked, and a dwelling made. That same scene is repeated 3 times in this story, and it's repeated for the fourth time in the Sigrifa's When he cuts her free from the burning, they sit on the edge of that bed, and they discuss things, and the things that they talk about here are brought to light in that discussion between Sigurdrifa and Sigurd, right? Sons they had, they lived and were happy. Hall and Dring, I'm not going to go over those names, but I will tell you what they mean. So the name means man, the strong, the holder of land, the free man, the craftsman, the broad-shouldered, yeoman with beard bound, i.e. not allowed to hang unkempt, right? Refinement. The dwelling owner, the farm holder, and with beard carried high, and then man. So this generation, this set of grandchildren, really going to make their grandparents proud. They're really going to make their parents proud. They're really going to do great things. They're building civilization at this point. So now we have a blessing. So what goes with the building of civilization? Justice. Now, there's always been this confusion, and I think it started with the Theodish, that Tyr was the god of the thing. Nowhere in this lore does it say that Tyr is any of that. He is not a god of justice. He is not the god of justice. It says that he is a guiding star for princes, right? As the Deus Praetor, the original Sky Father, right? Balder and Forseti are the gods of justice and settlements, right? They're the gods of the thing. So justice is brought into this foundation of civilization. So there's something else we need to look at as a gift. So not only is Rig bringing this inspiration into the people to build great things. But the gods are also offering things such as justice, so that every man has a fair shot. Holy cow! This is a real thing that our ancestors looked at as a benefit to their society, not as an excuse to continue acting like a power drunk mad Viking looking for combat somewhere. This is a true benefit that built a wonderful civilization, a wonderful culture that gave us this wonderful story that at times seems barbaric, but oftentimes rises to beautiful heights of poetry and vision. This is the real incorporation. This is what it's all about, right? If you want to walk around and enjoy and play role play and all the other things, do it. Whatever it takes to build that connection closer with the divine, engage in it. But remember what we're looking for when we do that. And I think that's where we get lost. And I'm sitting here looking at the Lord. The Rick Thule is the most beautiful aspect of that. And it ties in several locations with many other stories. Okay, so we've got civilization, we've got justice. Let's look at what the daughter's names mean, right? The daughter, the names means worthy woman, bride, the slender, the proud, the fair, woman, the proud, wife, bashful, graceful. Now we have strength, culture, beauty, the rudimentary foundations of love, ceremony, ritual, all of these things to build relationships with others. They become a very powerful part of who we are. We're not simply just breeding to populate the world. Now we're beginning to cultivate those high-minded ideas that make our lives worthwhile, that we might have children and live and be happy. So now he's going on down the road. Vince went rig, his road was straight, a hall he saw. Not just a house, but a hall. The doors faced south, away from the north wind. The portal stood wide. On the post was a ring. It says, and have them all. Raise the bar high, but always put a ring on the door, lest everybody will show up. Then in he fared. The flooring was strewn. It means it was clean. It was clean. Within two gazed in each other's eyes. So now this couple that have this opportunity of civilization, of justice, of the opportunity to not focus on survival, but to begin to focus on the ideas of loving each other. And that's one of the great things about comfort, is it gives us the free time to begin to engage in relationships that mean something, that have depth. Father and mother, and played with their fingers. There sat the house lord. You boys got to figure out, right? And wound strings for the bow. Now he's got something worth defending. Wound strings for the bow. So he may have it made, but he is by no means a fool. He understands there are others that will take it. Shafts he fashioned and bows he shaped. The lady sat at her arms. She looked. She smoothed the cloth and fitted the sleeves. Gay was her cap, and on her breast were clasps. Broad was her train. Of blue was her gown. Very difficult color to generate. Her brows were bright, her breast was shining, whiter her neck than the new fallen snow. This is a good thing. Now we have the ideas of beauty to go along with our love. Rig knew well. And then mother brought a broidered cloth of linen bright, and the board she covered, and then she took the loaves so thin and laid them white from the wheat on the cloth. Then forth she brought the vessels full, with silver covered, and set before them meat all browned and well-cooked bird. In the pitcher was wine, of plate were the cups, so they drank and talked till the day was gone. An offering to the gods. An invitation of the divine into your home, giving it the very best that you have. And then they have a son. Right? So we lingered for 3 long nights. 40 went on the midmost way, and then 9 months later, a child was born. So they brought the divine in their home, and they were blessed with a child. A son had mother. In silk they wrapped him. With water they sprinkled him. Once again, there's the ceremony. Jarl he was. Blonde was his hair and bright his cheeks. Grim as a snake's were his glowing eyes. A man of business. To grow in the house did Jarl begin. Shields he brandished and bowstrings wound. So he's learned his father's trade. Right? Bows he shot, and shafts he fashioned, arrows he loosened, and lances wielded, horses he rode, and hounds unleashed, swords he handled, and the sounds he swam. A man of high adventure. Hell yeah. Straight from the grove came striding Rig. Rig came striding, and runes he taught him. So now this fully developed individual who has embraced a life of high adventure, who has sought to develop himself by challenging in the swimming and the sound, and arrows loosed and lances wielded and war and horses. He has tamed the horse and the hound, right? He has learned his father's craft. He has done all of these things. He has developed himself to his fullest. And then Rig came striding. Runes he taught him, and by his name he called him, and son he claimed him, and bade him hold his heritage wide the ancient homes. Right? Forward he rode through the forest dark over the frosty crags, till a hall he found. His spear he shook, his shield he brandished, his horse he spurred, and with his sword he hewed. He wasn't given anything but the knowledge. Right? He was given the knowledge. He accepted the divine. He took the divine knowledge. He took that ancestral knowledge that Odin secured for us, right, from the halls of his ancestors. The cumulative knowledge of everyone that's come before us in the shape of the runes. He took those runes and he made himself into something even greater, right? His spear he shook, his shield he brandished, his horse he spurred, with his sword he hewed, wars he raised and reddened the field, warriors slew he, and land he won. Now, I'm not saying get on a horse and go swinging a sword, but I am saying get in the business of something and start making some money, right? That's our sign of success today. And we do ourselves a disservice when we don't go out there and try to make as much of it as we can. That's how we change our world. That's how we change the world around us for the people we love. That's how we make it better, right? And we can do the same thing with those runes today, right? So then he finds a wife. Same scenario. They sat on the edge of the bed, wedded to Jarl, the veil she wore. Together they dwelt. Their joy was great. Children they had, and happy they lived. Same thing happens with Sigurd. He goes forth. He slays the dragon. A lot of people don't understand that dragon's not some external thing. That dragon's usually something in here before we can go and sit on the side of the bed with whomever we sit on the side of the bed with to begin to form that relationship. As Sigurd did with Sigurdrifa, as these three sons did with the wives that showed up for them in the ceremony. They sat on the edge of the beds in the veil, whole 9 yards. It all comes together, right? And they had sons. Their names mean son, child, offspring, heir, son, descendant, boy, son, descendant, kinsman, and son of noble birth. So this is an important thing. So Kon is the son of noble birth. So Konungur, the regular word meaning king, the Kon part is actually not far out, but the second syllable of Konungur meaning young, right? But Kon the young learned runes to use, so now he's learned it. Now he's begun to take his father's heritage, not just building of bows and shaping of wood and the creating of war, but learning the skills of the men of the ancestors, Ansus, that ancestral wisdom. Not only has he taken that, he's also begun to learn the runes. Soon could he well the warrior shield, dull the sword blade, and steal the seas. He's going beyond just generating war. Now he is conquering the world that he lives in. Now he is shaping it to his needs. He is shaping it into something that he can be a part of. Right? You can't shape the world by separating yourself from it. You can only shape in the world by incorporating yourself into it, being a part of it, understanding. The Havamal says it, when hew wood when the wind blows. All of that line is about incorporating yourself into the world you live in, to be a part of it, to stand on, to be great. I guess the best word to put it. Now here's the other thing. This is also something that Sigurd done. Bird chatter learned he. Flames could he lessen, minds could quiet, and sorrows calm, the might and strength of twice four men. So he's a big dude, but here he learned the language of the birds. Sigurd also learned the language of the birds after he slew the dragon. Odin understands the language of two birds. That idea of men learning the language of the birds is rampant throughout mythologies around the world. understanding how the thing goes, right? What does a bird know? Probably everything. A bird knows how to fly from Alaska to Central America, just like a butterfly knows how to fly from Minnesota to Central Mexico. It don't fly in a straight line, but it still gets there. The bird flies in a straight line, which might be a little bit better. But minds could quiet and sorrows calm. So this was an individual that gave a damn about the people around him. I'm having a hard day. I'm not really sure what to do. So imagine this dude with the might and strength of twice 4 men come and say, brother, I got you. I understand what you're going through. Let's sit down and talk about it. Right now, between you and I, everything's okay. Let's see what's going on. That is nobility. That is what it means to be a man of strength. That's what it's about, right? And sorrow's calm. To have a dude with the might and strength of twice 4 men stand up beside you, pat you on the back, say, come on, let's go take a walk over here. Let's see what's going on. Let me see if I can walk you through what's going on. Let's see if we can get this together. Now we really own to something. Whoo, son, come on. Right? This is what it means when the divine interaction in your life. This is what it looks like. You have those abilities. They begin to develop. With Rig Jarl soon the runes he shared, more crafty he was and greater his wisdom. The right he sought, and soon he wanted Rig to be called and runes to know. Young Cone rode forth through forest and grove, shaft let loose, and birds he lured. There spake a crow on a bird that sat. Why lurest thou calling the birds to come? 'Twere better forth on thy steed to fare and the host to slay. The halls of Dan and Damp are noble, greater their wealth than thou hast gained. Good are they at guiding the keel, trying of weapons and giving of wounds. So those last names pretty much mean the theory that the Rigsthula was composed in Denmark, right? But this is where it breaks off. This is where we lose part of our heritage. But that little bit right there, this is where we lose the manuscript. It breaks off there abruptly and it's not completed. When we begin to look at what we might expect from all of that, now we're into something. Now we're talking about what it really means. So on the individual level, at 8 o'clock, I'm going to go on to Zoom on the Patreon, and we'll go into further depth of what it means on the individual. We'll use Sigurd and Brunhild or Sigurdrifa to go into what the individual aspects of that look like. So Sigurd also receives assistance from the divine. So next time you hear somebody say, the gods aren't interested in you, you're on your own, I disagree, and I do so vehemently. And I do so vehemently based on what I've just read to you here. I hope that everyone gets something out of that. I hope everyone enjoys it. Most of y'all know I'm always available. If you want to reach out, give me a holler. I'd be happy to talk to you. Leave a message here. If you want to give me a call, I'm all available. On my Patreon, The Noble Minded Heathen, there's this much that I have on YouTube and more on that website. So please feel free to join. Come on in, 8 o'clock. I'm going to try it again and go into some further depth on what it looks like when the divine assistance that we're looking for, something better to rise above our station in life. I hope to see you all there. All right. I really do appreciate everybody joining in tonight. Thank you very much.